The deafening crash of falling packages echoed through the crowded farmers' market as Brian Kent lunged forward, catching an armful of tumbling boxes before they hit the ground. Rain poured around them, turning the normally pleasant Sunday market into a chaotic dash for shelter. He hadn't planned on being anyone's hero today, just a single dad trying to buy affordable produce for the week with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. "Oh my God, thank you." The woman's voice was breathless with relief as she struggled to maintain her grip on the remaining bags. "I think I seriously overestimated my carrying capacity." Brian balanced the rescued packages against his hip, noticing how the woman's rain-soaked blouse clung to her slender frame. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, but even drenched, she was stunning warm brown eyes, high cheekbones, and a grateful smile that made his heart skip a beat. She looked to be around his age, early 30s perhaps. "No problem at all," he replied, feeling Lily tug at his jacket. "My daughter's always telling me I should use my height for good instead of just reaching the top shelves at the grocery store." The woman laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to brighten the gloomy day. She knelt down to Lily's level, her expensive-looking boots splashing in a puddle. "Your dad's quite the catch," she said with a wink. "I'm Natalie, by the way, Natalie Baxter." "I'm Lily, and that's my dad, Brian. We're getting potatoes because they're on sale, and Dad says they're versatile." Brian felt his cheeks flush. Budget-friendly meal planning. Not exactly glamorous, but it gets the job done. Natalie stood, her eyes lingering on his face. "Well, Brian, I don't suppose you and your versatile potatoes could help me get these packages to my car. I'd be eternally grateful." Before Brian could respond, the skies opened up even further. Raindrops hammered down like bullets, sending market-goers scattering. "Come on," he said, nodding toward a nearby awning. "Let's get out of this downpour first." They huddled under the striped canopy of a cheese vendor, Lily giggling as she shook water from her pink rain boots. Brian noticed how carefully Natalie held one particular package, a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Special delivery?" he asked, nodding toward it. Natalie smiled, something mysterious flashing in her eyes. "You could say that. It's a rare first-edition book for my collection. Cost more than my first car, actually." Brian tried not to look shocked. His entire grocery budget for the month wouldn't cover a book like that. The realization created an immediate distance between them. This woman clearly occupied a different world than his paycheck-to-paycheck existence. "Dad, I'm hungry," Lily announced, eyeing a stand selling fresh pastries. Brian checked his wallet discreetly, knowing exactly how much he could spend. "We'll eat when we get home, sweetie. Remember, we have those apples we picked up." Natalie observed the exchange, her expression unreadable. "Actually," she said, "I was about to grab something to eat myself. Would you two join me? My treat is thanks for saving my packages." Brian's pride wanted to refuse, but Lily's hopeful expression made that impossible. "That's very kind, but I insist," Natalie said firmly. "Besides, I hate eating alone." 20 minutes later, they sat inside a cozy cafe adjacent to the market, steam rising from their mugs while Lily devoured a hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. Brian couldn't remember the last time he'd sat in a cafe without calculating the cost against his monthly budget. "So, what do you do, Brian?" Natalie asked, sipping her latte, construction management. "I oversee residential projects, mostly." He didn't mention the recent layoffs that had pushed him into taking whatever shifts he could get. "It's flexible enough for single dad duties." "And Lily's mother?" Natalie asked gently. "She left 4 years ago, decided family life wasn't for her after all." He kept his tone neutral for Lily's sake, though the abandonment still stung. "What about you? What does someone who buys first-edition books do for a living?" Natalie hesitated, as if carefully choosing her words. "I run a small foundation. Nothing exciting, just a lot of meetings and paperwork." Something about her answer felt incomplete, but Brian didn't press. It wasn't his business anyway. He'd probably never see this woman again after today. "Dad helps people build their dream houses," Lily chimed in proudly. "He can fix anything. Last week, Mrs. Rodriguez's sink was broken, and Dad fixed it even though she couldn't pay him." Brian ruffled his daughter's hair, slightly embarrassed. Mrs. Rodriguez is 82 and lives on Social Security, and she makes us those amazing tamales. Natalie's eyes softened. You know, I'm having some trouble with the place I just bought. The previous owners left it in pretty bad shape. I've been looking for someone trustworthy to help with renovations. Brian raised an eyebrow. What kind of renovations? Everything from basic repairs to complete overhauls of certain rooms. It's an older home with a lot of potential, but it needs someone who understands construction from the ground up. She pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. If you're interested, call me. The pay would be competitive, of course. Brian studied the card. It was simple white cardstock with just her name and phone number. No company, no title. I'll think about it, he said, pocketing the card. As they prepared to leave, Natalie paid the bill before Brian could even reach for his wallet. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the world glistening and fresh. They walked to Natalie's car, a modest but new model hybrid that didn't scream wealth but definitely whispered comfort. Thank you again, she said as Brian placed her packages in the trunk. For everything. It was just a few boxes, he replied with a shrug. Sometimes kindness without expectation is the rarest thing in the world, she said, her voice soft. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Brian felt a connection that transcended their different circumstances. Don't forget to call about that work. I mean it. Later that night, after tucking Lily into bed, Brian sat at his kitchen table staring at Natalie's card. His bank account balance glared back from his laptop screen, not enough for next month's rent if nothing changed. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. He picked up his phone and dialed. Natalie answered on the second ring. I was hoping you'd call, she said, and Brian could hear the smile in her voice. The address she gave him was in an area of town he rarely visited, historic homes set back from tree-lined streets, the kind of neighborhood where generations of wealth lived behind tasteful facades. The next morning, with Lily at school, Brian pulled his work truck into the driveway of a large Victorian house that had clearly seen better days. Natalie greeted him at the door in jeans and a simple t-shirt, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more approachable than she had at the market. It's a disaster, isn't it? She said, gesturing to the house. I bought it at auction. The bank had foreclosed and it sat empty for years. Brian walked through the rooms, noting water damage, outdated electrical work, and floors that needed complete restoration. His mind automatically calculated costs. This would be a six-figure renovation, minimum. Why this place? He asked, genuinely curious. You could have bought something move-in ready. Natalie ran her hand along a dusty banister. My grandmother lived in a house like this when I was little. Summers spent running up and down these kinds of stairs, hiding in window seats with books. I guess I wanted to recreate a piece of that happiness. There was something wistful in her voice that made Brian see beyond the wealthy woman who could afford priceless books. For the first time, he saw someone with her own stories and wounds. I can help, he said finally. But I'll need to bring in other workers for some of this, and it won't be cheap. I trust you, she said simply. Do what needs to be done. Over the next few weeks, Brian spent every available hour at Natalie's house. When Lily wasn't in school, she came too, doing homework at a makeshift table in what would eventually become the library. Brian hired two former colleagues who'd also been laid off, and together, they began the painstaking process of bringing the old house back to life. Natalie was there most days, working on her laptop or on the phone with what sounded like important business calls. She never explained exactly what her foundation did, and Brian never asked. But sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, he caught a glimpse of weariness that made him wonder what pressures she faced. One evening, as sunset painted the newly repaired windows with golden light, Brian found Natalie staring at old photographs he'd discovered behind a loose floorboard. Are you okay? He asked, setting down his tools. She looked up, eyes suspiciously bright. These must be from the original family. Look at how happy they seem. She handed him a sepia-toned image of children playing on the very porch they'd just restored. Maybe that's a good omen for your new home, he said. I've never really had a home, she admitted quietly. Not since I was 10 anyway. My parents died in an accident and I grew up in boarding schools. My grandmother, the one with the Victorian house, she died the same year as my parents. Brian sat beside her, the distance between employer and contractor momentarily forgotten. I'm sorry, that's too much loss for a child. The foundation I run, it's named after my parents. They left everything to me, including their business. I was too young to understand what that meant, but when I turned 18, I inherited a fortune and no idea what to do with it. Brian's mind reeled. This wasn't just a wealthy woman. Natalie was apparently seriously rich, the kind of rich that appeared in financial magazines. He felt suddenly out of place in his dusty work clothes. The thing about money, she continued, is that people treat you differently once they know you have it. That's why I didn't tell you right away. I wanted you to see me, not my bank account. I see, Brian said, though he wasn't sure he did. How could someone like him understand her world? No, I don't think you do, she said, turning to face him fully. Do you know why I was at that farmer's market in the rain? Because it's one of the few places where I can just be a normal person buying vegetables. No one kissing up to me for donations or trying to pitch investment opportunities. Brian thought about the simple pleasure of taking Lily to the park, something he could do without anyone having expectations of him beyond being her father. Everyone needs somewhere they can just exist, he agreed. Natalie's phone buzzed with a message, breaking the moment. I have to take this, she said, standing quickly. It's the foundation. We're finalizing details for a children's hospital wing we're funding. As she walked away to take the call, Brian felt the gulf between their lives widen again. What had he been thinking? Starting to feel something for someone so far removed from his reality. The next day, Brian arrived to find a note instead of Natalie. She'd been called away on business and would be gone for a week. The work continued without her, but the house felt emptier somehow, as if her absence had taken something vital from the space. Dad, do you like Miss Natalie? Lily asked one afternoon as she colored at her table. Like her, Brian nearly dropped the trim he was measuring. She's our client, Lil. It's not like that. She looks at you the way Princess Jasmine looks at Aladdin, Lily said matter-of-factly, and you smile different when she's around. Kids and their Disney-informed relationship observations. Still, Brian couldn't deny that something had shifted between them during their conversation about her past. He found himself checking his phone more often, wondering if she'd call with an update on her return. The renovation continued, transforming the neglected structure day by day. Brian poured himself into the work, taking special care with details he knew Natalie would appreciate, restoring original moldings, salvaging vintage doorknobs, finding period-appropriate replacements where needed. When she finally returned, it was late evening. Brian was alone, finishing up some electrical work in what would become the master suite. He heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of high heels on the newly refinished hardwood. Brian, her voice echoed through the partially completed rooms. He met her in the main hallway, wiping his hands on a rag. She looked tired but elegant in a tailored suit, her hair swept up in a sophisticated twist that emphasized the graceful line of her neck. Welcome back, he said, suddenly aware of his worn jeans and t-shirt. How was your trip? Exhausting, productive but exhausting. She kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. Show me what you've accomplished while I was gone. He led her through the house, pointing out the progress in each room. When they reached the library, he hesitated before opening the door. I took some liberties in here, he admitted. I hope that's okay. The room had been transformed. Custom bookshelves lined the walls, waiting to be filled with her collection. A window seat had been built into the bay window, cushioned and cozy, the perfect reading nook. The ceiling featured a hand-painted mural of constellations against a deep blue background. Lily mentioned you loved stars and books, he explained when Natalie stood speechless. The mural was her idea. She helped design it. Brian, this is... Natalie's voice caught. This is exactly what I dreamed of as a little girl. How did you know? I didn't. I just tried to create a room that felt like you. She turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. That might be the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever done for me. Before he could respond, she closed the distance between them and kissed him softly. Her lips were warm, tentative at first, then more certain when he responded. Brian's hands found her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. Reality intruded abruptly as his phone buzzed in his pocket. Lily's babysitter calling. They broke apart, both slightly breathless. "I have to get this," he said apologetically. "It's about Lily." The babysitter needed to leave early, and Brian had to rush home. As he grabbed his tools, Natalie touched his arm. "I'd like to see you again, outside of work," she said, a vulnerability in her expression that had nothing to do with her wealth or status. "I'd like that too," he admitted. "But Natalie, our lives are so different. I'm barely making ends meet, and you're just a person," she finished for him. "A person who likes you. Can that be enough for now?" Their first official date was simple dinner at a neighborhood restaurant where Brian felt comfortable with the prices. Natalie arrived dressed casually, her only jewelry a pair of small pearl earrings. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests in old movies, hiking trails neither had found time to explore recently, and a mutual love of terrible puns that left them laughing until other diners stared. "Tell me about Lily's mother," Natalie said as they shared dessert. "If that's not too personal." Brian considered the question. "Caroline and I were young when Lily came along, 21, still figuring out who we were. She tried the family life for a few years, but ultimately decided it wasn't what she wanted. Last I heard, she was teaching English in Thailand. Does Lily see her? Video calls on birthdays, Christmas. It's not ideal, but I've never bad-mouthed Caroline to Lily. Everyone has their own path." Natalie nodded thoughtfully. "That's generous of you. What about you?" he asked. "No serious relationships, a few. But when you have money, there's always the question of whether someone wants you or what you can give them," she shrugged. "It's easier to focus on work." As they walked to her car after dinner, Brian took her hand. It felt small and warm in his, a perfect fit. "I should tell you," he said. "I did look you up after you told me about your foundation." She stiffened slightly. And I'm impressed by the work you do. Funding medical research, scholarship programs, sustainable housing initiatives, it's remarkable. But intimidating, she guessed. "A little," he admitted. "I've spent the last 4 years just trying to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. Your world is expansive in ways I can't really comprehend." Natalie stopped walking and turned to face him. "I admire you more than you know, Brian. You've built a life based on what matters, taking care of your daughter, helping your community, doing honest work with your hands. That's real in a way that boardrooms and investment portfolios never will be." Their second kiss was different from the first, more certain, a deliberate choice rather than an impulsive moment. When they broke apart, Brian felt something shifting inside him, walls he'd built after Caroline left beginning to crumble. In the weeks that followed, their relationship deepened. Natalie joined Brian and Lily for movie nights, Saturday morning pancakes, and trips to the park. She never arrived empty-handed, but was careful not to overwhelm them with expensive gifts, bringing homemade cookies, second-hand books she thought Lily might enjoy, or simple flowers for their table. The house renovation continued, now with Brian and Natalie working side by side whenever possible. She surprised him with her willingness to get dirty, learning to strip wallpaper and sand floors alongside the professional crew. One rainy Saturday, while Lily was at a friend's birthday party, they found themselves alone in the nearly completed house. Most rooms were furnished now, the vision they'd created together coming to life around them. "I have something to show you," Natalie said, leading Brian to a room they hadn't yet finished, a small space off the kitchen that had initially been designated as a pantry. When she opened the door, Brian was surprised to find it transformed into a workshop. Tools hung neatly on pegboard walls, a solid workbench dominated the center, and large windows provided perfect natural light. "What's this?" he asked, running his hand along the smooth surface of the bench. "I've seen how you come alive when you're creating something," she said, watching his face carefully. "The porch swing you built for Mrs. Rodriguez, the dollhouse you're making for Lily's birthday. You're an artist with wood. I thought you might need a proper space for that." Brian was momentarily speechless, moved by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Natalie, this is incredible, but before you worry, this isn't me trying to change you or your life. It's just me seeing you." He pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed by how thoroughly she'd come to understand him in such a short time. "I love you," he said, the words escaping before he could consider them. I didn't mean to say that yet, but it's true. Natalie's smile illuminated her entire face. I love you too. And it terrifies me because I've never felt this way before. That night, they made love for the first time in the master bedroom of the house they'd rebuilt together. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Brian confessed his lingering concerns. I worry about what I can give you, he said, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. You can have anything in the world. I had everything but a home, she replied, resting her head on his chest. Money can build houses, but it can't create what you and Lily have, that sense of belonging, of being anchored to each other. The next morning, Brian made breakfast while Natalie called to check on a foundation project. He overheard fragments of her conversation: budget approvals, timeline adjustments, staffing concerns. Her world was so vast compared to his daily concerns of mortgage payments and school supplies. When she hung up, he placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. How do you balance it all? He asked. The responsibility of managing that much money, making decisions that affect so many people's lives. Natalie considered the question seriously. I've built a good team, and I've learned that money is just a tool. It's how you use it that matters. She took a bite of toast, then added, but honestly, these quiet mornings with you feel more real than board meetings ever have. As autumn turned to winter, the house renovation neared completion. Brian found himself spending more nights at Natalie's than at his own apartment. Lily had her own room at the Victorian now, decorated with stars like the library ceiling and filled with books Natalie carefully selected to match her interests. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Brian arrived to find the house unusually quiet. Natalie had texted asking him to come over after dropping Lily at her weekly art class, but she wasn't in the usual spots: her home office, the library, or the kitchen. Natalie, he called, shrugging off his coat. In the living room, she answered. He found her sitting on the floor beside the fireplace, surrounded by papers and what looked like architectural drawings. What's all this? He asked, dropping down beside her. I've been thinking about next steps, she said, a nervous energy in her movements as she organized the papers. The foundation is opening a trades training center for at-risk youth and adults needing career changes. We'll offer construction, electrical, plumbing. All the skills you've shown me are so valuable. Brian examined the plans, impressed by their scope. This looks amazing. Where will it be located? That's what I wanted to talk to you about. She handed him a specific drawing. This is the proposed site. It's the old manufacturing complex on Riverside. We'd renovate rather than tear down, preserve the history while creating something new. Brian recognized the location: a series of abandoned factory buildings that had once been the economic center of the city's working-class neighborhood. I'd like you to run it, she continued. Design the curriculum, hire the instructors, oversee the renovation itself. You understand both the technical aspects and the human element, how these skills can change lives. He stared at her, processing the offer. It was perfect, combining his construction knowledge with his desire to help others. But something else caught his attention: another set of plans partially hidden beneath the training center documents. What are these? He asked, pulling them out. Natalie bit her lip. Those are, well, another idea I've been considering. The drawings showed a modest but beautiful house with a large yard and what looked like a workshop separate from the main building. I thought maybe, if you wanted, we could build this on the property behind this house. You and Lily would have your own space, but we'd be connected by the gardens. Her words came faster now. It's presumptuous, I know. We haven't talked about living arrangements long term, and I don't want to push. Brian silenced her with a kiss. When he pulled back, he saw uncertainty in her eyes. Are you asking us to move in with you? He asked gently. I'm asking if you'd consider building a life with me, she clarified. One where you maintain your independence but we create something together. Lily would have both the security you've always given her and opportunities I can provide, and I would have the family I've always wanted. Brian thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a chance meeting in the rain to rebuilding not just a house, but their ideas of what was possible. There's something I need to know first, he said seriously. All this, the job offer, the house plans, is this because you love me, or because you're trying to fix my life? Natalie's expression softened. Brian, I fell in love with you precisely because you don't need fixing. You've built a beautiful life with Lily despite every challenge. I'm not offering charity, I'm being selfish. I want you both in my life permanently. In that case, he said, pulling her into his arms, I think we should talk to Lily about what she thinks of these plans. Lily, as it turned out, was enthusiastically in favor, especially when Natalie mentioned the possibility of a tree house in the backyard. The three of them spent the evening curled up on the couch, drawing their own additions to the house plans and talking about the future. As spring returned to the city, the Victorian house stood fully restored, a symbol of what was possible when past and present, practicality and dreams, merged together. The training center broke ground with Brian at the helm, and construction began on their new home at the back of the property. 1 year to the day after their first meeting at the farmer's market, Brian took Natalie back there. They wandered among the stalls, hand in hand, Lily skipping ahead to examine fresh strawberries and artisanal cheeses. Remember how it was pouring that day? Natalie asked, squeezing his hand. If it hadn't been raining, I probably could have managed those packages myself. And we never would have met, Brian finished, pulling her close. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing. Or maybe you were just in the right place at the right time to catch more than just falling packages, she replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Later that evening, as Lily slept upstairs in her star-covered room, Brian and Natalie sat on the porch swing he'd built, watching fireflies appear in the garden. The air was sweet with the scent of newly planted roses and possibilities. I never thought I'd find this, Natalie said softly. A place that feels like home and a person who feels like family. Brian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Speaking of family, he said, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. I've been thinking about making it official. Tears filled Natalie's eyes as she nodded, too overcome to speak. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it caught the last light of sunset, not as valuable as her rare books or investment portfolios, but infinitely more precious. From packages to promises, Brian said with a smile, drawing her into his arms. And as night fell around their rebuilt home, they both knew that the greatest wealth they possessed was not in bank accounts or property deeds, but in the love they had constructed together, as solid and real as the walls around them, and infinitely more enduring.